Good afternoon, and welcome to the panel discussion on the impact of fleet technology on nuclear verdicts and safety. I'm your host, Amit Jain, representing FleetStore and Rhodes. We have assembled a distinguished group of panelists to provide their insight on what best-in-class fleets are doing to improve fleet safety and reduce exposure to nuclear verdicts. This thought leadership panel is sponsored by FleetStore. What is FleetStore? It is a Bosch initiative where fleets can browse and buy integrated, best-in-breed fleet management solutions at very competitive prices. FleetStore has over 70 curated solutions across 15 different categories, ranging from telematics to cameras to driver training and maintenance services. FleetStore is even offering a cashback on many of the solutions for a limited time. So I encourage you to visit fleetstore.com. Before I introduce the moderator, let me contextualize this issue. Fleet operating costs have been outpacing inflation. Just look at commercial auto insurance costs, which have risen over 40% in the past few years. Interestingly, most insurance companies are losing money on commercial auto. So what's going on? Besides higher frequency and severity of accidents, it is the issue of nuclear verdicts where juries award more than $10 million in damages that is plaguing the industry. In 2022, a Florida jury handed down a $1 billion verdict against two trucking companies. From 2015 to 2019, there was almost 300 nuclear verdicts, according to a research institute. But the picture is not all gloom and doom. Best-in-class fleets are bucking this trend and are actually improving their safety profiles by adopting fleet tech solutions to monitor and improve driver behavior. Our panelists will discuss in detail what are these best practices. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our session moderator, Dave Michelson. Dave is a former president and CEO of National Interstate Insurance Company, which is a leader in providing insurance to the transportation sector. He currently is an advisor to many insurtech and fleet tech companies as well. One process check. If audience has any questions, please hold them until the end, or you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to put in your questions during the session, and we will go over them in the end. Dave, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Amit, and welcome everyone. I think you'll find this session to be very informative with some very expert subject matter speakers that you'll be able to interact with today. You know, a couple comments relative to Amit's mentioning of nuclear verdicts and how they are impacting the commercial auto insurance industry. You know, a couple contributing factors as well. One that I experienced back with the Great Recession, 2007 to 2009, it seemed to change the chemistry of jury awards. Venues that were at one point conservative trended towards moderate. Venues that were moderate started trending towards liberal, and there were surprises. And so when there are surprises, the insurance companies can't build those surprises into their pricing, which also contributes to them losing money in their underwriting results. And the second phenomena that is just growing like wildfire is the whole industry of litigation financing. And this is where third parties, oftentimes private equity backed, will provide the capital to the plaintiffs to fund for the litigation costs working through trial, whether it's videos, accident reconstruction, you know, running mock trials, whatever it might be. These are very costly for a plaintiff to undertake, but capital is now readily available, and the litigation financiers, their return is a piece of the overall award should an award come in. So they're basically investing upfront in future expected returns. So those are a couple things going on that tie into the whole topic of the nuclear verdicts, but you can't control those. You can't control a jury. You can't control litigation financing. These are realities. They exist. They're not going away. So what do? Well, one thing you do is you try not to have the accident in the first place. And you'll be hearing a lot about that from, you know, the panelists here in terms of best practices. And then secondly, if you do have the accident, do you have the right process, procedure, and plan in place to control the costs associated with that claim? So with that as background, I'm now going to allow our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves to all of you today. I'll start off with Chris.
Thank you, Dave. Actually, that's a perfect segue because I live in Florida, the home of the $1 billion nuclear verdict, right, in 2021. And there was some tech tools. I mean, the gentleman was over his hours of service, did not have a legal CDL, and he was using a cell phone of one of the two plaintiffs there. So I work at Samba Safety. We offer a robust, flexible solution. We empower insurers and fleets to manage their driver risk better, basically providing them with critical insights and tools to do that. I have a really unique ability at Samba because I get to work with insurers as well as fleets. Prior to this, I worked directly with fleets on these tech tools. Average fleet size can be anything from 1.4 power units to thousands, right? And those thousands could be regulated drivers. They could be driving spurted vans or even their personal vehicles. So they aesthetically look very different, but I'm happy to have this conversation today because a lot of them are saying exactly the same thing.
That is great, Chris. How about you, Harry?
Hello, everyone. My name is Harry Stork. I'm VP of Safety Services at Protective Insurance, now part of the Progressive Insurance family. Dave, we are a niche player in the commercial auto space for heavy trucking. So I haven't moved into that advisory role. I'm living the battles today that face commercial insurance carriers with the legal environment, the regulatory environment. So I lead a team of loss prevention safety experts, on average 20 plus years in trucking, that work directly with our policyholders on improving their risk profile and their compliance with the FMCSA, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and then offer that info to our underwriting team to help accurately price the risks that we insure.
Wonderful. Great background, Harry. Thank you. Hey, how about you, Jeff?
Yeah, my name is Jeff Alsop. I'm the Senior Director for Channel Sales for GPS Trackit. Been doing this for roughly 18 years of experience in the fleet management and the telematics space. Seen tremendous growth from what we're talking about today, from initially back in the early 2000s to being on a dots of the map solution to now just key focuses around safety, especially with the introduction of video telematics, which we'll talk a lot about today. Our goal really is to improve top and bottom line profits of businesses by allowing them to make sense of all the data they're getting. That includes video now, to provide reports and dashboards and then create alerts around that to monitor those type of results. So I'm happy to be here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, as you can see from the panelists and their backgrounds, you've got a wealth of knowledge and experience here. So I really strongly encourage all of you listening in to not be bashful with your questions to this group. It's not every day that a group like this gets assembled. So just really make sure you take advantage of it and fire away. And as Amit said, those questions will be cataloged and saved for the end. So we're going to start off with a first question, just a general question for everybody in the group. And when you're out speaking with fleet managers, what are the top concerns that the fleet managers share with you? You've got your own concerns, but what do they share with you? And Chris, I'll let you kick this one off.
A couple of years ago, it used to, it generally was, nothing's really happened yet. Now it seems, besides driver shortage, right? I'll focus on safety here. There's so much data, I have no idea how to keep it organized. So I cannot extract any of the data and analytics and make corrective actions, which is like incredibly scary because at any given time, about 3 to 5% of your drivers are suspended, not necessarily because they've got a DUI, right? So I'm hearing the overwhelm now of there's so much data and I don't know where to go.
Well, I've been hearing that in my roles and the whole concept of big data. And we know Fleet Store has a unified dashboard that takes the various siloed chunks of data and brings it into one easy to use space that should help the fleet managers drive safety in their business. So If any of you have experience with the unified dashboard that you want to share as well on the whole data front, that'd be great. But Jeff, I'm going to flip it on over to you and see what you have to say about what fleet managers are talking to you about.
Yeah, I can echo Chris there. I mean, in my space, in the TSP world, and we're providing GPS tracking and telematics to businesses, it's been dots on a map, right? And so it's always that. It's dots on a map. It's that transparency it gives you. But top 1, 2, 3 reasons that people want to talk to GPS Track about our services is safety, period. And with the introduction of video dating back, I guess 5, 6 years now, it's becoming more and more prominent. The ability to have new tools, new processes, new data. And you're right, Chris, it's a lot. The big question for these fleet managers is, okay, now we have video. What do we do with it?
What do you do? Exactly.
Right, exactly. And so I know we're going to get to some more of that on how do we implement something like this? How do we implement these safety tools properly? But that's what we're hearing right now. I mean, I would say 7 to 8 of every 10 new sales is utilizing video telematics for safety, period.
Mm-hmm.
And Harry, what are they talking to you about?
I would agree that data overload is a key concern. Oftentimes, the buyer of these vehicle safety technology solutions is not the user of the technology. So there are many in the trucking space that we're in. The vast majority of trucking companies in the USA are smaller mom and pop organizations. 90% of all trucking operations on the road have less than 10 vehicles in their fleet. So the big challenge is data overload, and how do I work with my vendor to make the data that I am receiving aligned with our safety priorities so we can remedy issues that we have. Putting custom alert logic into place versus just off-the-shelf logic of I want to know every time a vehicle goes faster than X over the speed limit. You can get 50 to 100 alerts a day per driver. That's just unmanageable. So having custom alerts that might weave into that equation time and distance. So it will kind of eliminate what would otherwise be thought of as a safe passing maneuver. So just how do I manage all of this data? And then how do I document that I have a closed loop solution so I am moving beyond the identification stage? Technology is phenomenal with identifying behaviors. It's not so good without the human interaction to change the behavior. And if you don't document everything you're doing with coaching and training, you have a opportunity to be stockpiling evidence for the plaintiff bar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then piggyback on that, it's the aggregation of that data. I know Samba does a fantastic job of that, as do we, and you can couple our systems, by the way. But the big question I get asked, especially by those mom and pops, is who manages this? Do I need to hire somebody to do this? What does that look like from a staffing perspective? It's a big question for a lot of businesses of what is the time and effort and the man hours to effectively create, manage, and implement a correct safety policy. So yeah, it's a big challenge for businesses.
Yeah, I would just add one final comment that all of the technology that's out there, including solutions on our panel today, they're very powerful. A lot of the weaker entries into the market have kind of gone by the wayside due to not keeping up with technology, maybe not being well funded. One of the biggest areas that we hear from our business owners that we insure, our policy buyers, our insurance buyers, is that one area that is not prevalent today is a tracking mechanism to see how well my frontline supervisors are actually taking action on the data. We know there's a lot of alerts out there, but what is the scoring that we can do to make sure that my supervisor is closing the loop? So instead of having 15 speeding alerts or harsh braking alerts, what is the speed at which that frontline supervisor is acting on that and closing the loop with very thorough documentation?
It's a very important comment because when the tools are available and the information's available and there's not a process to take action, who does that help? It helps the plaintiff attorney and gives them something else to seize upon and play to the jury. So to have these tools or data and not use them is a challenge, especially for the smaller firms. So make sure you have the right processes and people in place to utilize the data and act appropriately. Chris, were you going to say something too?
The only thing I could add on that is that, these tech solutions today, there's a lot of really good ones out there, have those capabilities in place, like you mentioned, Jeff, right? So like, it's not enough to identify, like they've got the ways to be able to, like, I'll use our solution, for example, be able to track who's managing it. We employ AI to be able to suggest driver training classes for corrective measures. So a lot of these technologies, like Harry pointed out on the, that are Protective is suggesting to their insured, are well vetted, but they're simple, right? They're taking in vast amounts of data from federal, state, local sources, normalizing it and make you be able to make actions, not be overwhelmed by an incredible amount of data points that if you don't do anything with it, you should have known,
Yeah, find a software that makes it make sense, simplifies that information for you so you can act on those policies you create. Otherwise, you're left sifting through it yourself, trying to determine what needs to be done.
I mean, I just can't imagine the struggles of the smaller firms where the owner is also the hiring manager, is also the safety director, is also the mechanic or whatever. They're wearing all these hats. And are they able to look at the data and find out, are the accidents occurring at dawn or at dusk or in the last hour of that driver shift or in an urban setting or out on a busy freeway? There's so much information out there that can be dug into and find patterns and then respond to them. But it could just be overwhelming for the small firm for sure. All right, very good. Next area we're going to delve into is, and I mentioned this, the escalating insurance costs. So we've commented that the underwriting results for the industry for commercial auto have been less than favorable. And so, Harry, from your perspective, dealing with the buyers of the insurance at the fleets, what are the factors that you're seeing that are contributing to the rise in insurance costs that are being felt all across the industry?
Yeah, I would have to say that probably the primary driver of that, Dave, is that the insurance carrier did not price the risk properly to begin with. So, you can either have quantity or you can have quality. And there are cycles, like in any industry, where people are going for market share, or it's nice to have a very well-recognized logo on your, on your client list. But I think many of the sins that the insurance industry are facing are partly self-induced injuries due to not pricing properly. And then also, the rule number one of business is know what your costs are and then charge more, because then you make a profit and then you stay in business. The unique thing about insurance is there is a huge element of a crystal ball that is part of the pricing decision. That's the actuary team. And companies repeatedly have had to change their reserving, public companies, and have to announce that to their investors that we got it wrong again. We did not reserve our losses properly, and therefore we're taking a hit for that. And so the biggest promoter has been underwriting discipline to charge the correct rate. In 2022, of all the top 20 commercial auto insurers, only 2 had a combined ratio less than 100. So simply put, for every dollar that they took in premium, only 2 were spending less than $1 in expenses, including claims. So pricing is key. Rates have gone up for the last many years. We're seeing a little bit of slowing of that now, but it's still rates are going up. I think educating the industry of that fact is key. We still get a lot of inquiries that say, hey, if we adopt a dash cam, what kind of discount will we get? And the fact of the matter is, largely speaking, there are no discounts. Your rate is going up and your rate will be priced based on your performance. Commercial insurance, very, very different than the consumer UBI-based pricing model.
You know,
I'm
a
glad you
question.
said-
Go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna say, I'm glad you said that, Harry, because I get asked all the time, like, how much my insurance gonna drop if I employ these technology tools? And I'm like, Harry's gonna be very mad at me if I promise any sort of discount or my insurance partners. So that's exactly what I say to them. It's gonna go up, but it might not go up as much.
Much.
So
Yeah, a key element, I'll just kind of tie what the logistics are. So in the insurance space today, it is most common that a policyholder is on a 12-month policy. So I worked, Jeff, I used to work for a reseller of one of your competitors. So I've been in the place selling the technology, and I want to emphasize that technology is phenomenal. But typically what happens, maybe not always, someone decides that they're going to give dash cams, as an example, a try. They're going to deploy it as a pilot. You maybe get some kind of initial segment of your fleet to give it a try. And then once you feel comfortable that the value is there, then you move into the full deployment type of a schedule. So if the insurance company was going to cover some of the costs or pay for that or offer a discount, getting the pilot going, getting the full-blown implementation going, all of those things take time. And if the insurance carrier were to fund the solution or part of the solution, you may not even get a full year's worth of activity within your policy period. And if the results are not there, and the insurance carrier comes back to the fleet to say, this year we are looking at a 15% rate increase, which is not uncommon, the fleet may say, hey, we're going to go shop, because that we want to see what the market is. So unfortunately, if they shop and they go elsewhere, is the insurance carrier going to get their investment back of helping them get a dash cam solution up and running within that year? The answer is no. So there isn't a position now, especially with only 2 of the 20 top insurers being profitable at an underwriting level. There isn't a rainy day fund to kind of spend money to help their clients get these solutions. I don't want to be a naysayer because dash cams are huge and very, very valuable. But in commercial trucking, fleets have had telematics for the last 10 years, largely over and above the mandated ELD device. And telematics has not given them a rate reduction in their insurance because their performance has not warranted that. So a lot of hard work ahead of us still.
There's one more area where the dash cams help, and at National Interstate, I'm going back now 2 decades. National Interstate was one of the first underwriters to bring inward and outward facing cameras to the transportation industry and subsidize some of the costs. But in addition to the driver behavior modification, what it does today is it helps address fraud. I mean, there's all kinds of studies out there where 20%, 30% of claims costs are wrapped up in fraudulently filed claims. Well, with the inward and outward facing camera, for sure, the outward facing does help, but you can have the irrefutable witness. And Chris and Jeff can speak to this as well as Harry, that you could have the worst of worst claims, but if the driver's not at fault and that video exonerates that driver, you can possibly close that file or settle it for nuisance value versus it exploding into a big 6 or 7 figure award.
Yeah. Efficiency within claims process is massive when it comes to that, unbiased witness in terms of video and safety solutions. And with what Chris and Samba are doing is aggregating that type of data as well, that it assists with an overall kind of performance record of a driver over time as well. So that's great to have as also.
So Jeff, maybe just to keep it going with you, and from what you're experiencing, what issues are the top issues that are impacting driver safety, with the commercial fleets that you're working with?
Yeah, that's a good one. So we just recently did a joint study, and this is baffling data. Maybe some panelists can help me out with this. So over 300 fleet managers, and safety was 90% of respondents said fleet safety was very or extremely important. Of those same respondents, less than majority of them said they would be willing to spend between 1 and 20% of their budget on safety. And some as low as none. So there's this idea out there that, we need to be safe, right? Harry's here because of the rising insurance costs, litigation, judgments, things like that can put a business out of business. They understand the problem, but it seems like it's not cost effective for them to do something about it necessarily. So that's where I think coupling safety solutions, technology, having the right policies, having the right framework in place for your business is absolutely key. I think another stat was 70% of incidents occur because of distracted driving. How do we stop that? Right? There's tons of technology around that type of thing. Dash cams included. Cell phone blockers where they're not allowed to use their cell phone while they're driving. It becomes a brick, so there's no point in picking it up, right? So there's things out there that they can do. Speeding, vehicle health problems, making sure vehicles are maintained on time to where you don't have a major mechanical issue that causes a safety infraction or causes a safety incident are things that can impact that. And then it goes back to what we've discussed a lot is, all right, I'm concerned about X. How do I create the policy? How do I enforce it properly? How do I explain it to drivers so they understand the expectations, the measurements of it? How do I avoid the big brother conversation? A lot of questions surround that. And so spin's the wrong word, but to implement it correctly, you have to have that driver buy-in, which I'm sure we'll get to. But that goes back to the training. You mentioned earlier, especially with these mom and pop shops, you have this information. Now, what do you do with it? The worst thing you can do is have all this historical data, not do anything about that, then have an incident. And that's a field day for a lawyer.
Yeah, you talk about, Jeff, I'm going to springboard off that or cannonball off it. You talk about the 70% of distracted driving, like NHTSA put out a study, 94% of claims crashes are human behavior. So like potentially preventable, right? So on your point, I would say speeding, distracted driving are the two main that we hear the most, right? So did a great study. The good thing is that thousands, millions of drivers, we've got a ton of data points, right? So how do we identify, but how do we future indicate potential claims, right? So we did a study for future crash indicators for speeding, right? If someone's speeding 21 to 25 miles an hour and they are ticketed for it, they're 4 times more likely to get into an accident, to get into a claim than someone else that's just ticketed for speeding. If they are ticketed for distracted driving, they're 4 times more likely for you to have a claim. So we've got these two main, I would say speeding and distracted driving are the ones we hear the most. But if you don't know what's going on right now, and you don't have those indicators with technology, you can't, to your point, Jeff, corrective measures. You can't do the next step forward. So that's why, knowing from a telematics standpoint, knowing from a license standpoint, when something goes wrong, you can take those corrective measures. But if you don't know,
and you gotta be
and Harry, on the distracted driving, it's not just our drivers. It's all the other vehicles around, our insured vehicles, in the fleets. And you have to almost assume everyone's going to be on their cell phone as a starting point, and then maybe there's an exception to the rule. So how does that play into your interaction with the safety function at the fleets, and almost getting them to think that way and be driving really defensively and eyes up and really anticipating silly maneuvers in the cars around them?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
No,
great point.
Harry, I was going to say, Harry, you could probably help out with this. I think the stat is like 7 in 10 incidents with a commercial vehicle or the consumer vehicle's fault, something along those lines.
Correct. I was just going to say that, Jeff.
Yeah.
No problem. So, with some of The data shows that accidents involving a large vehicle are typically the fault of the other party. But it kind of gets back to the deep pockets theory. To be in trucking, you have to have a minimum of $750,000 of incident coverage. Most companies are using a $1 million limit as kind of their floor. So the exoneration available with dash cams that was talked about earlier, not only does that help with a claim, but it can also help exonerate some of the compliance issues with FMCSA. The regs as they were written was if a vehicle is in an accident, even if a truck was parked, and it involved another vehicle being towed away, that was considered to be an at-fault accident as defined by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. So having camera technology, you can use that to put in what's called a data queue to try to get your name off the naughty list. I think the biggest thing of all is fleets out there must come to the unfortunate realization, especially with larger fleets or larger assets on the road. It's not a matter of if you're going to be sued, it's a matter of when. You are going to be sued by a plaintiff counsel at some point, unless you're just really rolling the dice and being very lucky. So you need to prepare for that suit. You need to prepare your data, your practices, your safety procedures can't be a dusty manual on the bookshelf. They have to be living documents. There's huge challenges with driver shortages, and companies have to move freight or provide goods and services, but you can't hand the keys to a driver that is not ready for that role and expect miracles. And that was one of the biggest reasons that Chris alluded to in the $1 billion verdict. A few years ago, there was a large trucking company that had the first $100 million award, and that was thought to be just crazy. And literally less than 5 years later, the new number jumped to $1 billion. So the technology is there, but the humans in the safety department and the safety culture of an organization are really the biggest powerhouse of all to keep your drivers and fellow motorists and others safe. A 20-ton vehicle hits something, it's usually catastrophic. So understanding that issue is key. And then taking the appropriate action with staffing. People will invest in technology, but they won't invest in another FTE to help manage the data. So it's an all hands on deck scenario that we work under today.
So playing off of Harry's comments about some best practice areas that he's seeing in terms of the fleet's got to be ready. They know that the suit is going to happen. It's not a if, it's a when. Jeff and Chris, what are you seeing in terms of best practices in some of the best fleets that you've worked with?
Jeff, would you like me to go first?
Sure, please do.
All right. I think, at Samba, we like to think about like a 6-point approach because, humans and human mind is really the powerhouse. We are dealing with people. Technology is awesome, but technology is your co-pilot. So we think of a 6-point approach, right? So the first is have a driver safety policy that you can follow. That's easy to follow. Secondly, that you get your buy-in from your drivers, so they get the sign off on it. Second, we like to monitor. We say monitor is extremely important. Expecting people to self-report or pulling manual MBRs. I mean, I look at MBRs for a living. It is so confusing, right? So monitoring your drivers in a way that maybe brings together CSA, telematics, violation data all in one cloud so that you can see kind of a full pane of source there to monitor your drivers. 3, ongoing training, right? If you're doing ongoing training, you are 2 times more likely, or you are, if you're doing ongoing training, you're going to have half the violations of people that just do it 2 times a year, right? You need to have a proper intervention plan. What happens when something goes wrong, right? Are you able to assign driver training automatically, or what is that plan going to be? 5, we're going to recognize talent. So we got to take our people and lift them up that are doing a great job. So is that bonuses? Is that a point system? Is that recognition? And 6, you need to employ a risk consultant, right? So when it Harry's team members, you need to go to a lawyer. Like at Samba, we worked with Scopelides. So that's a leading transportation law firm to create a driver safety policy. That is just a great tool to be able to provide to people. But like, it's never just one thing. We think of like a 6-point approach that once you have it down, very simple to follow. You have to figure out something that is manageable for people to be able to accomplish successfully.
Yeah, can I just say ditto? Can we move on? No.
Mhm.
Beautiful. That was beautiful, Chris. No, I would say yes, all the above. I think from a driver adoption standpoint, I think that's a key piece of this entire metric. And Chris, I think your last point 6 was incentive, right? I mentioned making these things, setting expectations, making those expectations measurable, having that driver buy-in. How do we get driver buy-in? We've got to create a competitive environment around that. It's amazing what you'll have when you create competition within a business. And when safety is a competition, it gets fun for those drivers. When there's bonuses associated with that, when there's trips, year-end prizes, incentives for that, it gets a better buy-in for them. Also, just creating best practices is creating an ecosystem of solutions, right? GPS Track It won't necessarily do it all. Coupling that with Samba is a huge bonus, right? That is supplemental solutions working together to create a more robust environment for you. Add in protective insurance that actually knows how to understand, underwrite the risk properly, so you have the policy that's going to cover you in the best fashion, right? So there's never going to be, in my opinion, guys, a one-size-fits-all solution for everything. You need to find the right partners and incorporate those things together. With the way software and data now are today, thanks to guys like Amit, we can combine these solutions together where they can share data and create that ecosystem and simplify that information for businesses. So like I said, Chris nailed it there. And I would just add to find the best of class solutions that you can combine for that overall kind of holistic solution for the business.
And Harry, I think you've got a lot of experience at Protective with, how fleets are controlling their insurance costs. And one of the ways is they take on some of the underwriting risk themselves, whether it's a deductible or a self-insured retention or a captive program where they're willing to have skin in the game. And for them to have skin in the game, they should have their act together and have a strong safety program and utilizing the technology the right way. But there's always room to improve. But to talk just briefly about how taking some underwriting risk themselves helps fleets control their insurance costs.
Yeah, great point, Dave. So there are typically a few options available and different levels of each, but we offer what has traditionally been known as a guaranteed cost product, and that means the insurance carrier is on the hook for the very first dollar of the claim. When you move beyond that, you could have a deductible just like you may have for your own personal car insurance or your homeowners. As you get to more sophisticated and larger companies that have more financial strength, many move towards what is called a self-insured retention. So that's when you're getting to deductibles that could be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of risk that the insured takes on. And typically they would have their insurance carrier or a third-party administrator manage their claims up until their insurance kicks in above that limit of retention. But getting back to the kind of the safety do's and don'ts, I like to keep things pretty simple. Human beings are what leveraging the power of technology, that's a very, very strong combo. It's not technology by itself. It's not the human by itself, but you've got to keep it simple. Use the KISS method. Start with a safety culture that has buy-in from the ivory tower, from the C-suite. The biggest thing that changes behavior is consequences, both good and bad. So incentive programs are very, very powerful. But if you don't have consequences for less than desired behavior, behavior won't change, and your negligence increases potentially. So the big thing is, look at the issues that are causing you the most pain. Pick resources, whether it's technology, human resources, or whatever, to address the priority issues. 3 or 4 at the most. Get those under control. Once you've satisfied for that, add number 5. I know I was guilty in my days with selling technology. You love to do the demo and show that your dots on a map and your geofencing and your idling and all of these things that you can do. It's a very amazing story. But if you're trying to get someone to adopt 15 new things, they're going to fail. You know, the vendor needs to be held accountable, as does the safety team. And work with quality vendors like Samba and GPS Track It, and get people that understand your business more so than they understand their product. There's a big difference there.
You know, and I think in terms of, you know, the most valuable resource at these fleets, you know, that's so rare, it's so hard to come by, is a quality driver. I mean, there's a driver shortage. Getting them to adopt technology and something new and cameras, if you get adoption, you know, you lower turnover. Turnover is hard to quantify, but a real cost. You lower turnover, you're going to lower your claims costs, and you're going to better control your insurance costs. So you've got that driver that maybe just doesn't quite get it, or they're 20-year veteran that knows everything. So Chris, and maybe also Jeff and Harry, but, you know, how do you get the drivers into focusing on the fundamentals of defensive driving?
I think there's a couple ways to look at it, and everyone is different. So I think that the thing we pointed out is that we are working with humans, right? They're our greatest asset and our most important asset. So getting buy-in could be different at every company. I've worked with a lot of HR managers and safety managers to roll out a program of really explanation. This is why we're doing it. This is why we're creating a safer community versus this is what we're doing. You have to sign it. So, and it also depends upon the driver itself. We might have other drivers that I think our #1 driver training courses are really defensive driving. So it's this drip method of consistent reminders, and that we're making it part of a whole safety protocol, not just a gotcha. So it really depends upon the driver. But the thing is that, to Harry's point, if it doesn't come down from the ivory tower and it's not adopted as like, this is what we're doing from a safety standpoint, it's not gonna feel like something that's gonna coach me and help me. It's gonna feel like I did something wrong. So it's really all about the delivery. We work a lot of times with safety managers and HR managers to be a partner, like not a vendor, in understanding how important it is to roll out.
Yeah, Harry said the scary word out loud, right? Consequences.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fact of the matter that there have to be consequences, and businesses have to be willing to implement those consequences when those things happen. So that's the scary part for drivers. That's where we get into, even with video being pretty prominent over the past 5 years, it's still we went from the black box GPS was Big Brother. Now I'm on camera. This is super Big Brother. I don't want to work here anymore, right? To Chris's point, you have to explain it well. It's a policy for the company to keep you safe, right? Change the narrative of, we want to spy on you, to, you know what, we just want you to get home to your family at night. We want to make sure that you're safe on the road to where an incident doesn't happen. If something does happen and it's not your fault, we want that proof, that evidence of that type of thing. And then that's a big reason why I think we've seen this extreme kind of uptick in video telematics here recently. With our solution, a lot of what we talk about is the cameras that we use. They do in-cabin coaching. They are real-time edge processing. They're telling the driver exactly what they're doing in the moment. And it becomes a psychological game. It actually has become fun for me. I've had a camera in my vehicle for over 2 years, guys. I drive completely differently than I did 2 years ago. My goal each day is now to not have the camera talk to me. So with those diverse driver profiles that Chris was mentioning, that's sometimes a tougher road to hoe with others. But I think if you put them in the right mindset for it, it can really benefit. And one of the things we're doing now with some newer technology is called driver safety assistance. What this allows our cameras to do is actually give the driver a pre-alert warning before a driver violation has occurred. Because bar none, every time I do something wrong, my supervisor gets a video. He's on me every day about I did this, I did that. Well, it's an extra layer that provides additional coaching for the administrator on the other end, but also gives the driver a chance to correct their behavior before they get a violation. So it brings them as part of the solution by changing that behavior in the cabin before your supervisor is aware that you've done it. Because if you're following the instruction from the AI, you're inherently driving safer. But I think we have to, coupled with incentive programs, we have to make this about their safety as well. Like, we want you to get home at night, guys. And then kind of understanding the data better. I say this all the time. When you have a black box, a GPS device, a hard brake's just a hard brake. When you couple that with video evidence, a hard brake's not always just a hard brake, right? It could have been a positive defensive driving maneuver captured by video where you're able to avoid an accident because you are paying attention, because you are driving defensively, because you are performing well in the vehicle and paying attention. So that video provides the idea that we can create a positive spin around having that type of technology, having that type of evidence versus making it all so negative, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, shifting gears just for a moment, because I want to allow time for any questions that have come in, over the last 45 minutes. Not my punchline, but a punchline that has been longstanding. We're from the government. We're here to help you. How has the government been addressing fleet safety, in your worlds, and what impact, is it having in the local service and delivery segment?
Yeah, I'll start.
Any one of you can jump in here.
Yeah, I'll start out. I mean, the biggest impact we've probably seen over the last, call it 10 years, is the ELD mandate, right? That has been part and parcel to pretty much any TSP out there and additional services they're offering to make sure that we're following proper hours protocols so we can reduce fatigue, reduce incidents on the highway from fatigue and falling asleep and things like that. So that's been a big player in our space, is the advent of ELD. And then we're also seeing certain industry segments, especially in things like hazmat and other places that have made mandates around having GPS tracking in general. Or now we're starting to see implementation of quote unquote video mandates for certain industry segments. And maybe Harry can speak better to that than I can, but there's some things we're seeing around from a governmental standpoint, but ELD is probably the biggest one in the past decade that has really been handed down as you have to do this to operate.
Yeah, I would agree, Jeff. The ELD mandate took forever to get adopted. There were a lot of different changes along the way, and opposition from various parties, in particular the owner-operator groups out there. But it's interesting, even for something that is that powerful or potentially that powerful, what we see when we manage our insured's data that we get access to from the FMCSA portal, where one of the 7 basic scores, as they're called, is the hours of service infraction. Overwhelmingly, the largest percent of infractions under the ELD hours of service mandate are not drivers driving extra hours in a day or consecutive days. The biggest infractions of all continue to be what are called form and manner, and that means that the operator of the vehicle does not know how to use their ELD device. So they're driving totally within the legal limits, but they're, as I say, they're not smarter than the buttons, and they don't know how to track what they're doing properly, and therefore they are getting violations for ELD or hours of service. And the way the federal government scores your basic scores, if your hours of service is in alert status, you automatically move into what's called a inspection selection system threshold, where your vehicles will be inspected over and over and over. And the more your vehicle gets inspected, the more things that are found, and it's very, very hard to get off the naughty list once you're on it. So even something that was very positive, the ELD mandate, it still is a good example of where you've got to take the time to get with your vendor, to train your team properly, because you can have the best device in the world, but if your drivers aren't using it properly, you will be cited by the FMCSA and be put in alert status that will get your vehicles inspected every day, all day. So lots of work, even on things that are very, very positive.
Great insight for sure. You know, at this point, I think I'd like to put a quick pause and see what kinds of questions have come in. Amit, can you share any with this group for them to respond to?
Yes, thank you, Dave. By the way, really engaging discussion. So I was mesmerized by the answers. One of the questions that we have is, how will AI change this whole area of fleet management?
I could jump on that one. I was I actually was at a conference last week and I spoke on AI, really talked about how it's impacting insurance. The thing we have to remember about AI is that it is created by subjective humans. So there's a lot going on there. There's 5 main areas, whether it's insurance and fleet safety, that we're using AI today. So it's claims, CX, so customer service, right? So everyone's seen those chatbots, ChatGPT, which was announced 9 months ago, right, as generative AI. Really improving our service with our partners, telematics, underwriting, and fraud detection, right? So it is prime. It is a co-pilot. We are a very heavy regulated industry and insurance and in fleet. So innovation will never catch up to, or regulations will never catch up to innovation. But AI for sure, it will make us better when used properly, as created by subjective humans.
Yeah, we've seen, specifically around our solutions, just it's the growth and the adjustments and the changes within AI, within our internal technology that we offer is kind of been mind-boggling for me. I mentioned I've been testing and have a camera in my vehicle. My prior role was a sales engineer and solutions architect, so I got my hands all over everything we did, software and hardware. And just the advancements we've made in the different event triggers that we offer now with AI, the accuracy at which we offer those things, and the configurability at which we can make those adjustments. Because I think that's key when you're dealing with an AI solution like a dash cam. Make sure it's got configurability. Make sure you can make the proper adjustments for real world, realistic situations. There's going to be some guidelines around it as far as how desensitizing we can make things so that it's still a safety solution, right? In terms of things like tailgating, close falling, and collision warnings and things like that. But now with AI, we're monitoring the outside of the vehicle. We're monitoring the inside of the vehicle. We're monitoring behavior. We're monitoring driver's eyes, head, and pitch. Like, it's phenomenal, the advancements that I've seen in just the past 6 months with the solutions we offer and how it's growing. And I think the key to the growth, to Chris's point, is it boils down to accuracy. If we're getting more accurate with the use of AI, it's more beneficial as we go along. So that's what we've really seen from our end, and I only see that continue to improve. So
thank you. The other question is, if you had to tell us one thing we can do to start this journey towards becoming a more safer fleet, it's directed to each of the panelists. What would you advise that one thing be?
My answer would be institute consequences into your safety culture and move beyond identifying alerts. The identification stage is step 2. After you buy the solution, it will identify things, but then you have to do the rest.
I'm pretty excited about technology. I mean, I'm scared to hear when you say 39 billion cost employers every single year for crashes. 20,000 crashes a day. But we've got this, advanced data and analytics, and they're moving into, like Harry said, we're moving into prediction right now. So if I say one thing, I'm pretty bullish on monitoring. It gives you an exact baseline. 3 or 5% of your drivers right now have a suspended license. You should know that. So monitor those drivers. Takes minutes every week. It's so simple, takes the guesswork out. So get that baseline in place and then just get alerts when things go wrong. That's what I would say you can start easily today.
And if I
Yeah.
recall correctly, Chris, that $1 billion verdict in Florida wasn't the issue that the driver had a suspended license.
He did not even have a proper CDL, right? He was over his hours of service and he was on his cell phone. I'm not going to say that's preventable, but like AJD, they should have known. They did not pull his license. They did not pull his MVR. And there was unfortunately an 18-year-old boy that lives was lost on Jacksonville on I-4. So you can use technology as your co-pilot.
Yeah. My answer is gonna be pretty simple. It's combining what Chris and Harry said, right? Monitor, make sure you have the process, and then make sure that something happens when you catch the things that you catch, period. Right? So implement the technology, monitor it, and then create the proper policy around it.
And then document everything you do. And that's the hardest part.
Yeah, especially
Everyone's getting ready to start to begin to get a committee together to do this. You have got, my father used to tell me, if it ain't in writing, it ain't. If you're not documenting what you're doing, you're going to have a very, very tough time when you're called on the witness stand in front of a very sophisticated legal team that's coming after your organization. And if you can't prove it, our loss prevention team uses the adage, tell me, show me, prove it. I don't want to hear about your policy. I want to see where it's written, and I want to see how you've documented adherence to whatever it is that we're asking a question about. So you have to be able to prove it.
You can think about the old adage, it might get worse before it gets better. For everybody listening out there, when you take those proper steps to implement the right type of policy with consequences and with technology, it might be a little scary to start with, but in the long term, you're going to protect your business a lot better, protect your people a lot better, period.
Yeah, and just start with the things that are most critical. Don't try to do 20 at once. Get the top 2 or 3 things that you know are concerning, get those under control, and then build some wins. Get that positive momentum within your organization, fortify your safety culture, ask for help from your loss prevention, from your vendors. Help is available, but at the end of the day, this stuff sounds kind of easy and common sense. It's very hard because companies are in the business of moving their vehicles around, and safety is not always at the forefront. And there's oftentimes maybe a little friendly rivalry between safety and operations, and that cannot be.
Yeah. There's a great business book, and what it preaches is businesses developing a wildly important goal. And safety has to be that. Outside of operating within your whirlwind, you have to have that one goal. And the only way you reach an effective, wildly important goal is through simplification, figuring out what that one thing is that can make a giant impact across the business. So, yeah.
Folks, we are coming up for time here. So I want to thank all of you, Harry, Dave, Chris, Jeff. It's been extremely engaging and insightful discussion. Thank you so much for your time. And anybody else who's interested in exploring these solutions or others, please go to fleetstore.com. You'll find these solutions there and others that can help you in this safety journey. So thank you and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.